I still remember the first night I heard the music. It was soft, like a lullaby whispered through a half-open door. A tiny melody, slow and tender, floating up through the quiet of the house as if it had been waiting for someone to listen. That night, the sky was heavy with clouds, and the moon was only a pale blur behind them. I had just moved into the old house a few days earlier, and everything still smelled faintly of dust and time. Wooden floors, old curtains, shells that had forgotten the touch of hands. The village outside had gone silent hours ago. Only the distant sound of crickets and the occasional bark of a faraway dog reached my window. I lay in bed, half awake, half drifting, when I heard it. A delicate click, like a tiny spring turning, and then the music began. The sound came so softly at first that I thought it was just my imagination. 3 high notes, gentle and clear, followed by a slow, falling line of melody. It was not a song I recognized, but it felt strangely familiar, like something I might have heard as a child and forgotten long ago. I held my breath and listened. The music seemed to come from somewhere above me, just a little over my head, as if it were floating down from the ceiling. From the attic, I thought slowly. There was an attic in this house, though I hadn't gone up there yet. The previous owner had only mentioned it briefly, saying it was mostly empty, just old things and old dust. The tune went on, steady and unhurried. It was not scary. It was not loud. It was simply there, repeating itself, turning in slow circles like a music box that had been wound carefully and left to sing itself to sleep. I listened until somewhere between one repetition of the melody and the next, my eyes closed. The last thing I remember of that night was the feeling that someone, somewhere above me, was trying gently to sing me to sleep. The next morning, the house felt normal again. Sunlight rested on the floorboards. A soft breeze came through the open window, bringing in the faint scent of wet earth and leaves. Birds were chirping near the garden wall. The quiet, ordinary sounds of morning made the memory of the music seem distant and dreamlike. Maybe it was just a dream, I told myself as I made breakfast. Moving to a new place can make the mind do strange things. But that night, it returned. Once again, after the village had grown quiet and the dark had settled gently around the house, I lay in bed and listened. The first few minutes were just silence. The slow ticking of the clock in the hallway outside my room, the soft rustle of fabric as I turned my head on the pillow. Then very faintly, I heard the click. The same melody followed, small and delicate, floating through the stillness. It was like listening to a child humming to themselves in another room, the sound slightly blurred by distance. This time, I sat up slowly. The music was clear now that I was fully awake. It came in little loops, each repetition exactly the same, with tiny mechanical pauses between the notes, as if metal teeth were catching and releasing in a tiny, patient mechanism. A music box, I thought. It has to be a music box. The attic, silent all day, had become a soft, invisible music room at night. The thought did not frighten me. If anything, I felt a gentle curiosity, like the feeling of wanting to open a book whose title you can't quite read. I didn't get out of bed that night. I only listened. The melody wrapped itself around the darkness, slow and careful. My breathing matched its rhythm, and soon I felt my body growing heavier, my mind drifting. The music seemed to move closer and closer until it was almost like it was inside my chest, playing just behind my heartbeat. Without noticing when, I fell asleep again. On the third night, I decided I would follow the sound. The day passed in quiet tasks, unpacking a few more boxes, wiping down shelves, placing books where they seemed to belong. Every so often, I would look at the ceiling, imagining the attic above, the dust, the shadows, and somewhere in that forgotten space, a little music box waiting for darkness. When night came, I lay awake on purpose. The house slowly surrendered its light. The last orange edge of the sun disappeared behind the trees. The walls turned from soft gold to gray, then to deep, quiet blue. I did not turn on the lamp beside my bed. I wanted the night to come fully, to bring with it whatever it had brought on the previous evenings. Minutes passed, long and gentle. Then, finally, the familiar click sounded through the ceiling. The melody began again, slipping quietly out of bed. The floor under my feet was cool, smooth wood. I moved carefully, not wanting to disturb the stillness. The music floated above me, steady and unhurried. In the hallway, the clock ticked a slow, sleepy rhythm. The air smelled faintly of old paper and soap. At the end of the hall was the narrow door that led to the attic stairs. By day it looked quite ordinary, just a small white painted door with a simple handle. But now in the dimness, it seemed a little taller, a little thinner, as though it were holding its breath along with me. I placed my hand on the handle. The metal was cool, but not cold. I turned it slowly. The door opened with a soft sigh, as if it had been closed for a long time and was grateful for the attention. A wooden staircase led upward, disappearing into shadow. The music was clearer here, though still gentle. It repeated its soft pattern, guiding me like a distant lantern. I climbed step by step. The air grew slightly cooler as I went up, and there was a faint scent of old wood and fabric, like an antique shop that had been closed for years. The boards creaked softly under my weight, a polite old sound that seemed to say, quietly, "Someone is here. Someone has come." At the top of the stairs was another door, simple and unadorned. The music flowed from the other side, each note like a little knock asking for company. I opened the door. The attic was not large, but it was taller than I had imagined. Low beams crossed the ceiling, and the roof slanted on either side. There was a small round window at the far end, through which a pale wash of moonlight slipped in, outlining dust motes that floated slowly in the air like tiny wandering stars. Old boxes were stacked against the walls. A narrow table stood near the window. A chair, draped with a thin sheet, sat patiently nearby. The music seemed to drift from somewhere near the center of the room. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw it. On the floor, near a faded rug, sat a small wooden music box. It was very simple. No golden decorations, no shiny paint, just a little box made of dark wood, its edges worn smooth with time. The lid was half open and something inside glinted faintly as it turned. I stepped closer. The melody flowed from the tiny metal drum within, each pin catching a note and releasing it into the cool night air. The sound was clear, yet soft, like water trickling over smooth stones. I knelt beside the music box. The floor felt cold through the fabric of my clothes, but the air around the music box felt strangely gentle, almost warm. I watched as the mechanism turned, and for a moment, that was all there was. Me, the box, and the quiet, patient music. Then I noticed I was not alone. At first, it was only a feeling, a soft awareness at the edge of my thoughts, like the sensation of someone entering a room behind you. Very slowly, I lifted my eyes. Near the window, standing in the pale pool of moonlight, was a small figure. It was a child,
They were turned slightly towards me, their head tilted in a gentle, curious way. Their hair fell in soft, pale strands around their face. Their clothes were simple, like something from another time, a light dress that reached just below the knees, bare feet almost touching the floorboards, but not quite. The strange thing was not that the child was there, but the way they seemed quiet. Not sad, not angry, not frightening, just quiet. As if they had been alone for a very long time and were surprised but not displeased to find someone else here. The music continued to play between us.
We looked at one another for a moment that felt longer than it was. The house seemed to hold its breath. Even the ticking of the clock downstairs felt too distant to belong to this moment. "Hello," I said softly, not wanting to startle the child or the silence. The child did not speak, but their eyes, large, slightly luminous in the thin moonlight, softened. They glanced down at the music box, then back at me, as if to say, "You found it." I looked at the box, then back at the child. "Is this yours?" I asked. Again, no words, but the child moved a little closer, their bare feet making no sound. Their outline was gentle, a little blurred around the edges, like a figure in a half-remembered dream. They lowered themselves to the floor opposite me, sitting cross-legged, and placed their hands in their lap. The music played on. We stayed like that, the three of us, me, the child, and the song, resting in the soft, patient silence of the attic. After a while, I spoke again, my voice only slightly above a whisper. "Do you play this every night?" The child's head tilted again, and this time there was the faintest hint of a smile. They lifted one small hand and reached toward the music box. Their fingers passed through the lid like mist, but as they did, the melody grew just a little clearer, a little warmer, as if their touch had encouraged it. I realized then that I was not afraid. Sitting in the quiet attic, under the faint glow of the moon, listening to the music with this silent, gentle ghost child, I felt something closer to loneliness than fear, and then slowly, something closer to comfort. Perhaps they were lonely too, I thought. Perhaps, night after night, the house had slept while this little spirit wound their music box and listened to their own small song, waiting for someone to hear it. "I can stay for a while," I murmured. The child's eyes brightened just a little. They turned their head, as though listening more closely to the music, and the melody continued its slow, steady circle. We did not speak. We did not need to. The music filled the space between us. All the words that might have been said, all the questions that did not require answers. Time grew soft around the edges. Minutes stretched, then blurred. The pattern of notes became familiar, almost like breathing. After some time, the mechanism inside the box began to slow. The notes came just a bit farther apart. The melody sagged gently at the corners, as though growing sleepy. The ghost child watched the box with quiet attention, as if this slowing were part of a nightly ritual they had seen countless times. When the final note faded into silence, the attic felt very still. The child looked at me again. I reached out my hand, moving slowly, letting them see every small motion. I did not try to touch them. Instead, I placed my hand very lightly on the side of the box. "May I?" I asked. The child's gaze dropped to my hand. After a moment, they gave the gentlest nod. I found the tiny key at the back of the box and turned it carefully. Each twist made a soft winding sound, like a whisper of things being put back into motion. When it felt right, I stopped and lifted my fingers away. The music began once more. The child's face relaxed, their shoulders softened, If the spirit can sigh with relief, I think they did then, just a little. We both listened to the music again, now slightly brighter, newly awakened. "I'll come back tomorrow," I said softly. As the notes drifted through the room like feathers, the ghost child looked at me with eyes that seemed deeper than the years this house had stood. Slowly, they smiled. It was a small smile, but it made the moonlight seem just a bit warmer on the floor. When I rose to leave, the music continued to play. I walked slowly across the attic, my steps quiet. At the door, I turned back. The child was still sitting beside the music box, listening with her head slightly bowed, as though the song were a story only they could truly understand. I went back down the stairs, back through the hallway, back into my room. The melody followed me like a distant echo. Lying in bed, I let the music settle over me. It was softer now, filtered through the floorboards, but still clear enough to trace the shape of the tune. My eyes grew heavy, my breathing grew slow. The song felt like a hand resting gently over my thoughts, smoothing them out. I fell asleep easily. After that night, it became a quiet habit. Every evening, when the sky darkened and the sounds of the village settled into silence, I would wait. Eventually, I would hear the familiar click of the music box, and the melody would begin. Sometimes I went up to the attic. Sometimes I stayed in my room and simply listened from my bed. But whenever I climbed the narrow stairs and opened the attic door, the ghost child was there, sitting near the box, waiting. We did not talk with words. Our conversations were in the way the child tilted their head, the way their faint smile appeared when I wound the key for them, the way they watched closely as the box began to sing again. It was in the way the music wrapped itself gently around us, night after night, creating a little island of sound in the sea of silence. On some nights, I sat on the floor and leaned against the box, closing my eyes while the music played. I could feel the presence of the child nearby, light and calm, like a candle flame that did not burn, but simply glowed. On other nights, I murmured small things into the air. Memories from my own life, thoughts I had not spoken out loud in years. I never knew if the child understood, but whenever I spoke, the melody seemed to grow a little warmer, as though the music box too was listening. The attic became a gentle place. What had once seemed like a dark, forgotten space was now a room filled with quiet company. The dust did not feel lonely anymore. It simply drifted slowly in the moonlight, as if dancing to the dreamy tune. And always, when sleep began to tug at my eyelids, I would stand, give the child a small nod, and walk back to my room. The music followed me down like a soft blanket. Over time, I began to notice something about the song. It was always the same, yet not quite. The pattern of notes never changed, but the feeling did. Some nights the music felt a little more wistful, like someone standing at a window watching rain. Other nights it felt almost playful, with a lightness that made me think of spinning in a field, arms wide, eyes closed. I wondered if this was the child's mood, gently shaping the way the notes landed in the air. Once, as I wound the key, I spoke very quietly. "Did you used to fall asleep to the song?" The child watched me with those soft, luminous eyes. They did not nod and did not shake their head. But as the melody began to play, they leaned just a little closer to the box, their eyes closing halfway. I took that as an answer. The nights continued like this, one after another as the days passed quietly. In the mornings, I went about my life, the garden, my work, simple meals eaten by the open window. The house felt kinder now, less empty. I knew that when night came, I would not be alone. Sometimes during the day, I would stand beneath the attic door, listening. Though I knew no music would come,
The ghost child, it seemed, only appeared with the moon, but just knowing they were there somewhere above, sleeping in their own strange way, made the house feel gently full. One evening, as autumn leaned closer, rain began to fall. It started as a whisper, then a soft curtain of sound against the roof and windows. The world outside turned gray and hazy. Inside, the air was cool and still. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and waited in the dimming light. When the rain had settled into a steady, soothing rhythm, I heard it. Click. The music flowed down from the attic once more, its notes mingling with the sound of raindrops. Together, they formed a layered lullaby. Water and metal song, night and memory. I climbed the stairs. The attic felt even softer that night. The sound of the rain overhead made the space feel close and safe, like the inside of a cocoon. The ghost child was already sitting by the music box, their form outlined by the pale, silvery light coming through the round window. I sat beside them. For a long time, we said nothing. The music played, and the rain answered. My breathing slowed, the child's head rested slightly to one side, as if they too were drifting in the rhythm of the night. "I'm glad you're here," I whispered.
The child turned their face toward me. Their smile this time was a little more visible, a little less fragile. It warmed the space between us. The melody continued, patient as ever. In that moment, I understood something. This was not a haunting. It was a habit. A little spirit, caught between time and stillness, winding the same song night after night, waiting without knowing they were waiting, until someone arrived to listen. Until someone said simply, "I will stay for a while. I will come back tomorrow." As the music looped again and again, my eyes grew heavy. I felt my body sway gently where I sat, the rhythm of the rain and the music wrapping around my thoughts like a soft scarf. The edges of the room blurred. The ghost child watched me, eyes calm, as if they knew this was how the night should end. "Good night," I murmured, not sure if I said it out loud or only in my mind. The child's smile deepened just a little, and they lowered their gaze toward the music box, as if returning to their own quiet watching. I stood, moved slowly back to the stairs, and descended, each step carrying the melody with me. By the time I reached my bed, my eyelids felt as heavy as if they were lined with velvet. I lay down. The last thing I heard before sleep came was the faint, distant song of the music box, drifting down through the floorboards like a gentle promise that it would be there again tomorrow. And in that soft, fading moment between waking and dreaming, I felt sure that somewhere above me, a lonely little ghost child was no longer quite so alone, cradled in the sound of their own music and in the quiet company of someone who listened. The song played on, slowly, softly, until it too fell asleep.